Welcome to this little video on constructing a 9-patch, a disappearing 9-patch for our charity quilt as part of the Wicklow Patchwork Group. I have chosen here my fabrics. I have gone for some yellow, 2 opposite yellows, 2 pinks, a feature fabric in the centre and the white surrounding it. So that's my basic, that's what I'm calling my basic 9-patch. I'm going to machine those together to create a stitched piece. I'm going to chain piece them. I'd suggest for your machine settings you use your 1/4 inch foot and check your own 1/4 inch seam, that it's accurate. Change your needle if necessary, because a nice sharp needle will, create nice stitches at about a size 70. Use your cotton thread and set your stitch length to 2. Setting it to 2, stitches are smaller, it will reduce the risk of the seams kind of separating at the end when they're trimmed or when we're trying to put them together. So that's a nice sharp needle, your machine obviously in good working order, your stitch length reduced to 2. Another handy little tip is to use a little piece of fabric as your leader and ender, and that will reduce your thread, the amount of thread that you're using. Also to chain piece the pieces together. So if we take a piece right sides together, I always lay them out on the board just to make sure I'm happy with the layout. It's like the old adage, measure twice, cut once. And I'll machine sew my 1/4 inch seam all the way down, and I'll just add in the second square, and I'll add in the third set of squares. When I have those stitched, I'll open them out and I will finger press to the dark side. I'll finger press the seams to the dark side. Then I will add in the 3rd row. I'm not separating these just yet, I'm leaving them all together. So if you can imagine that I have machined one side, and now I'm going to do the same with the 3rd row. Machine those together and finger press them. When you have that done, excuse me now, I'm a little bit of, here's one I made earlier, which I hope. So here's my pieces. They were all joined in a column, and I'm just going to snip the little thread to separate them into 3 separate columns. The reason for that is, I know there's some videos online that show you, you can do all of this one. I just think it makes sure that your seams are locked in the right direction. So what you want to achieve here is that the seams lock nicely together, and that's why we press them to one side and particularly to the dark side so that the whites are free. Pin those in place if necessary, just to hold them. And that's just to make sure that the little twist, that the seams don't do a little twist when you're sewing. Check both sides. This one here has a little tendency to twist, so we're going to make sure that that lies perfectly flat. And the same on this side here. Okay. Watch your start, watch your end, and again, machine sew across. So I'll just quickly do this one. Don't sew over pins, you damage your needle. And I'm just watching the end of this here. It's kind of gone off a little bit offline there. And again, I'm going to put in my little ender. And there's one. And I'm going to finger press that up to the 2 dark ones. I'm going to do the same with the bottom. Join that. So when you've all of that done and it's nicely pressed with your iron, this is the block you have then. So these are all nicely joined. Now, what next part is the cutting. So take your centre square, and you can check it. It should be 3 inches because you're starting with a 3.5 inch square. So you can check that with the ruler. So mine there is the 3 inches in the centre. In order to cut this and split it, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to lay the 1.5 inch line along those seams. Now I want to make sure, now I haven't got my cutting board here, so I'm just going to show you this. I'll have one done. So I'm going to cut vertically, and I'm going to make sure that my 1.5 inch line is lying on the seam line. So I cut vertically. Do not move the fabric. Lift your ruler carefully and turn it back, and do the same on the horizontal line. So get your 1.5 inch line lined up and cut. When you have that done, what you end up then with is something like this. 4 pieces. Your center square is cut across. Now, this is where we're going to do a little bit of magic. And for this particular quilt, this is the layout that we're going to use. But obviously, if you are doing blocks of this yourself, you have a lot of opportunity to play with colour, play with whatever you want. It's a really nice block to do. I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to turn it 1 turn so that the yellow comes into the centre and the little block from the centre comes out. You see that there to the side? And I'm going to do the same with the one on the other side. Magic. Isn't this cool? So you've rearranged a simple basic 9 patch into something a little bit different that looks, gosh, how'd you do that? Very complicated looking. As we did with the others, flip right sides together and flip right sides together and machine those. Okay, I'm going to do that because I run out of a lot of this fabric to complete. So bear with me. And my little ender fabric in there. Now, always lay out again just to make sure everything is lying in the direction you want. Now, I'm going to split that thread here and you'll see the reason for that in a few minutes. I'm going to finger press it to the yellow or to your coloured side just to make sure all the seams are lying flat. Just finger press that nicely. The same as what you did with the previous. You're going to lock that centre seam together and 2 little pins just to make sure that the divils don't move. Now this time you'll notice you have seams on the back as well, so you want to watch that those ones, now in this case they're actually lying in the direction I want, so they're fine. So my 1/4 inch seam again, off we go, and I'm just checking as I go along to make sure that the seams underneath don't get themselves twisted, and as I come up to my centre I'm checking again, and here we go. Now, and there's my block stitched. Okay, now how do we decide what way the seam? So if you turn over the back, now apologies that I haven't actually got this pressed with the iron. My iron is upstairs and I'm just using my finger pressing. Now we have a problem here. If I leave all of this, there's a lot of bulk in the center here. So what I want to do is undo a couple of little stitches. Now I hope I can get this in close enough for you to see. Do you see these little stitches here that just finish that? Just pull those out. Okay? And when you lay your piece down again, go to the center and you will get, oops-a-daisies, that it will fan, and of course it's not going to do it for me now. There we go. The other side, sorry, the other stitches didn't come out on the other side, so make sure they come out on both sides. There we go. Now, and one will lay one way, and you'll have a nice little baby 4 patch. Can you see that? Not very clear there, maybe. Little baby 4 patch in the centre, and that reduces that bulk in the centre, which will help us when it's being quilted. Now, it is important that we all try and do our blocks in the same way, that all the seams lie correctly. So if you can, and that's to assist those that are putting the actual blocks donated by members in the final quilt, is that all the seams will nest together when we come to put it together. So our finished block, then I took it up to the iron and pressed it, and there's my finished block, nicely pressed, and very little trimming. So if you're accurate with your 1/4 inch seam, careful with your pressing, most importantly careful with your cutting at the start, that you do an accurate 3.5 inch squares for your 9 patch, your finished block should measure 9 inches. You may have to do a little bit of tidying on the side, but it should basically come to 9 inches. I hope you have fun and enjoy making a disappearing 9 patch for our charity quilt, for our wonderful charity this year, Purple House. Thank you very much.